still under discussion, choosing advertising as a career. And of course, still with us, Gordon Cook, Klasie Wessels, Brett Morris and Esther Moloi. Just before the break, we were touching on one point, and Klasie, I just want to bring it back to say, what has changed in the industry from when you first started 25, 28 years ago till now?
Sure, so much and in some ways so little. But just a thought, when the three of us were a little bit younger, or Esther's age, maybe when we entered the industry, if I think back, things were, when I say simpler, there were fewer options. Things were a bit more formulated.
Options meaning?
Well, you know, in terms of media choice.
Right.
In terms of, I mean, that, and also the creative thinking was affected by that. Where these days, with social media, it is so wide, it is so open. There are so much expected from advertising, and so many new careers have developed that maybe, Gordon, to your point earlier, young people coming in these days may need a different kind of guidance in order to promote their career. And also,
Brett, a question to you. As a creative, is your success based on the amount of awards you win?
Not entirely, but certainly it certainly does help. I mean,
that's a lot of pressure.
It is a lot of pressure, but every industry has awards, you know. I suppose in a creative industry, it's a little bit more subjective, but generally the best people are usually the ones that are judging what is the best work. And that's a way of raising the bar and making sure that you are keeping the standards high, and it's a good way for young people to understand what is a good example of good work and what should they aim for.
Well, what about creative burnout? Are you seeing that at the moment?
I think it does happen to some extent, but again, I think those people who have longevity in our business are the ones who are focused on a career as opposed to focused on the wrong things. So there is burnout, but if you're in a good agency and you have working with good people, there's no reason you shouldn't have a very long and hopefully fruitful career.
Gordon's agreeing here.
Yeah, I mean, I think...
But let's put it on the table. Yeah. Let's really say how it is.
And I think
creatives burn out.
Yeah, I think a lot depends on good creative directors, heads of creative teams to manage that process. And hopefully the better schools also try and empower students to manage their own sort of creative river. And we certainly try and spend a lot of time on that, because you want the river to flow, but sometimes you can get it to flood and people are all over the place. But then it can dry up, and then you look for other possible
that's a challenge.
Stimulants. So I think a lot depends on this learning environment of great creative directors to watch and manage this. But I don't think it's, I mean, all doctors burn out. Accountants are burnt out before they start.
It's just how you deal with it. Yeah. But I think the perception is that with creatives, that pressure every single day, Esther, to perform. To be better than the last script that you wrote, or the last ad you produced.
Yeah, that's always pressure. But I mean, for me, like, well, in copywriting essentially, it's all about, you can't just sit and have a creative idea like fall onto your lap. It doesn't just come. You have to work at it. So you have to have a systematic way of continually working at it and crafting your work. And for me, that's always the hardest, but that's where the best stuff comes from.
You always to pick up on that, I think that's very valid. People have this misperception that creativity, just as Esther says, falls in your lap. When actually the best creative people are the most disciplined. I know it sounds odd, but they work hardest. You think about the best creative people in all other arts. They're incredibly disciplined, they work incredibly hard. And that's why they're successful, not because they sit around contemplating their navels the whole day.
And Brett, if I can add to this, if you think the question, why do somebody do something? If you have a creative person who is doing creative work because that's what they want to do, they want to do nothing else, they will put up with a lot. And their burnout point may be way longer than somebody who's doing a job because they don't have anything else to do.
True. So it must be a passion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to that point, I think to the young people listening to us, in my experience, the great creative people are impassioned about people. They're fascinated by people. They are always intrigued by how and why we behave. And I think that helps with burnout issues, because you're always excited to notice this extraordinary behavior we have on a daily basis. So, yeah, and I think so to the young people who are fascinated by people, this is a great career, because it's a chance to engage with people and to resonate with their emotions. And
are we seeing a lot of movement overseas, local talent going overseas, Klasie?
Sure, Jackie, that maybe is not a question for me. From what I can see, people are certainly expanding their horizons. 15 years ago, people maybe didn't have the options or the confidence, or it wasn't that easy. These days, it's certainly Africa. I mean, there's a lot of people going into East Africa. We were talking about it earlier. Opening up their own agencies, going and work for other agencies, and having a lot of fun and building a career. And
because more and more corporates are expanding their footprint within Africa, so there's a need there for that. Would you like to take that question, Gordon?
Yeah, I think we have lost a lot of talent to overseas. That's a reality. And some now and then you hear have come back, which is pretty cool, but a lot have stayed overseas. I think there's huge opportunity for the young Esthers and the young people listening to a possible career in our field to embark on a career in other African countries once they've studied, and make a contribution there and come back with that learning. And for us also to encourage some young people from Kenya, Nigeria to come and study here.
What do you say? Is it something that you would consider, either Africa or abroad? Do you think that will be good on the CV, get some experience over there?
Yeah, I think it would be very interesting. Also, just to broaden my horizon as a creative person and as an individual, because sometimes it's not always good to just keep yourself in one place the whole time. But for me, it would be more of a working experience, yes, and it would be something that I would consider. And I know a few of my classmates have gone overseas.
And that's sad, isn't it?
Well, I mean,
we want to keep our local talent here, really.
Definitely, and I think, again, to the young people listening, one of the challenges, and we've seen it happen many times with people who go overseas, South Africa and Africa to a large degree is a fundamentally creative place.
Correct.
We have far more opportunities here. We tend to be allowed to be more creative for some reason. I think we're more entrepreneurial. I've seen many times young people go overseas thinking that it's going to be, the grass is going to be greener, but it's actually, it's more stifling. They often don't get work produced. It can be a very corporate environment where they have less opportunity. So South Africa has a lot going for it in that. In fact, we used to have a case where a lot of people came from overseas to work in South Africa so that they could get some good work into their portfolios, and that's and then go back overseas.
And Brett, many of them didn't want to go back.
Exactly.
They actually wanted to stay.
They had too much fun, yeah.
Interesting. So, Klasie, life after advertising.
I was reflecting on the burnout discussion. Now, I've got images of somebody jumping off a building. but if I think, I don't know what burnout means, but maybe I had that. I got slightly bored. My energy levels wasn't the same. I felt I need to make a change. So it probably took me 2 years to make a decision to leave the industry that I've spent my life in. To do something else. Yeah, so I'm building something new for myself, and I'm having a lot of fun, and I'm finding it very meaningful.
And talk to us about that, because I think you've made such a name for yourself within the industry that I think that it's actually assisting you in your endeavours today. So take us through what your initiatives are.
When I left Draft FCB, I really didn't know what I was going to do. So it took me probably 1.5 years to get that out of me. I mean, it was amazing. It was actually very frustrating, but I finally got it out of me, and I started Street School, which is developing people through experience. I realized that working with people on their dreams and what they want to achieve and where they want to go is stuff that I enjoy. So I've got a business going, and that's what I do: leadership development with an experiential twist to it. In order to get people to just get over their limiting self-beliefs and just actually to fly and realize they can do it.
And that just comes back to the point, Gordon, about the absolute importance of education for our leaders of tomorrow.
Absolutely. And the relevance, however, of that education. Because with this, I think what Klasie saying, with these new careers, I mean, we are genuinely graduating people into jobs that weren't even there when they started their degree.
In closing, some closing comments from all of you. Advice for anyone starting an advertising, a career in advertising. What do you say, Esther?
I think you really need to be passionate about what you want to do. If you want to be a creative, then it must be something that you're passionate about, because you'll probably it's something that you constantly work at. So along the way, you will get people that will, or times where your work is not that great and you'll get bad feedback, but it's something that you need to work on constantly. So it's passion that will drive you to ultimately be one of the best creatives.
Just another question, do you think you are a born creative? Do you think it's something, it's a skill, it's something that you're born with? Or you can actually learn? Gordon, is it something that you can learn?
I think you can learn. I think the great copywriters, great art directors, there's a part of me that believes that they had this natural talent that they've now tapped into.
Right.
But having said that, I think all of us would agree everyone has an imagination. The problem is it gets knocked out of us.
Some of us more than others.
Yeah. If the school didn't knock it out, our parents, God bless them, they knocked it out, or society knocks it out because it's not seen as an important thing. So I'm sort of being a little bit iffy on it, but
so a bit of both, maybe.
But I believe everyone's got it, and I believe with skill you can unleash it.
There was a study done, I don't know exactly, a couple of years ago, where they tested creativity, and something like 95% of 5-year-olds regarded themselves as being creative. Something like 19-20% of 21-year-olds regarded themselves as being creative. What happened was conditioning. Others external stuff telling them you're not actually that good. Yeah, so
interesting stuff. Quickly, advice.
Yes, I think we've talked about it a lot, but passion is key, and I think curiosity, as Gordon sort of alluded to earlier, and you know, I think I remember offering at one stage to work for free. Esther, just so you know. Just so that I could get into an agency and work with the kind of people that I wanted to work with.
Absolutely.
And that's more important than anything. And there will be a curve. You will have to invest a certain amount of time, but you've got to stick with it. You've got to be passionate. It's got to be what you want to do. And there will be a point that one day you'll start making some money, hopefully.
Of course you'll make money, Klasie.
Esther, make a nuisance of yourself. Make a nuisance. Talk to everybody that want to listen or don't want to listen. Make a nuisance of yourself.
So Esther will be at Draft FCB on Monday morning.
I'm going to camp outside the office. Thank you.
Gordon, in closing.
Yeah, I think young people must just, if they want to be a copywriter, they must immerse themselves in it. Study the great copywriters, read their work, listen to lyrics of songs. You've got to just immerse yourself in that field. You can't rock up to say you don't really know any great copywriter if you want a job. And if you want to be a great art director or designer, you've got to know the best or some of the best. So you've got to live in the world of your field.
Thank you, gentlemen and lady, for your insights, and thanks for joining us on Media and Money.